Something that a lot of people probably don't think about are the trees of Tyria. Trees in general are really cool, but they are incredibly important when it comes to a fantasy world. How are you supposed to explore a forest that doesn't have any trees in them? There are a wide variety of different trees in the game, including some that are incredibly important for the story of Guild Wars 2. So let's go over my favorites. In the number 10 spot is the Great Tree. This is a giant tree located in the upper reaches of the Tangled Depths from the Heart of Thorns expansion. This is a pretty big area that connects to a lot of different places in the map. The most prominent part is probably the Ogre Camp, as it is right next to it, and an escort event begins from the Ogre Camp that goes into the tree, but it also connects to the area at the entrance to the map, and then other places as well. So it's just a big part of the map, and because of that, there are some other events that take place in here as well. As far as the tree itself goes, it's aptly named. It is a giant tree that goes high into the sky. It's hollowed out inside, which obviously allows events to take place in it, and for players to travel through it. The top parts of the tree are missing for whatever reason, so as you climb up the tree you begin to see open sky compared to the cavernous areas that the roots are reaching down into. There are a lot of spiders, bats, trolls, and other creatures that call this tree their home, and as you climb all the way up, which requires a little bit of jumping if you don't have a mount, you can find a special spot at the top of the tree, where there are some wyverns that are nesting up here in a field of flax, which is one of the few locations in the game where you can find a flax farm, which makes this spot a pretty frequented area by many players. And off in the far end of this area you can find some tropical birds looking out over the Ogre Camp, where you yourself can get a nice view of that area. In the number 9 spot are all the different oak hearts, moss hearts, pine souls, and other varieties of tree-like monsters that you can find throughout the game. I guess this spot could go for races like the Sylvari, but I don't really view them as trees, but I guess they are basically tree babies, but we can talk about them later. Anyways, these are really cool creatures that are very similar, but change a bit depending on what region of the world they are in, where pine souls are more barren and can be found in colder climates. Moss hearts are very mossy and overgrown and can be found in jungle regions, and oak hearts are more basic and have leaves similar to the basic trees in the world they are located in. I just really like these types of creatures because it just helps make the world of Tyria really feel like a fantasy world. They are strong, noble, but relatively peaceful creatures that are living their lives, but will defend themselves should an adventurer choose to attack them. They also have some connection to deeper lore with the Druids, who were a human tribe that ventured into the Maguma jungle to make peace with the area and live in harmony, where they were able to summon Druid spirits that are very similar to oak hearts, and they themselves turned into oak heart-like creatures, where you can find some of their husks around the world today. Where there's a lot more lore and story related to the Druids, but that is a basic summary. Also, shout out to the original Guild Wars Oak Hearts. They are cool, but they definitely glowed up a bit with Guild Wars 2. In the number 8 spot is This is a Tree, which is a harvesting node that you can find in the Bastion of the Obscure and Amnitus in the Secrets of the Obscure expansion. This is one of the most important features of that expansion that plays a pivotal role in the lore, story, and gameplay of the entire expansion, where you can take your axe to the tree to chop it down and harvest some good old mithril ore. Where this is obviously a joke that ties into the story going on with this area of the world. You can find a few other harvesting nodes around here as well, like mithril, but the eyes are question marks, which will give you outerwood logs, baris, which will give you outerwood logs, and question mark, exclamation point, which is another type of tree that will give you piles of flax seeds. Or what I said is pretty straightforward, it's just a fun joke, but let me walk you through a bit of a story. Where before the release of the Secrets of the Obscure expansion, there was a post about what the development team was most excited for with the upcoming expansion. It got a variety of different answers, but one that stood out to people was Rory's, where Rory was a prominent figure in the Guild Wars 2 community and now works at ArenaNet, and his answer was gathering nodes, which this is a long-running joke/meme between him and the community, but it did spark some curiosity amongst some players, and when the expansion released, players found these gathering nodes and had a good laugh. And since then, I've heard a rumor that he is no longer allowed to place gathering nodes in the game. In the number 7 spot is the Greatheart Weald Tree. This is a very special tree located in the Finney Ridge region of Queensdale. There are quite a few trees around here given the fact that it is called a weald, which is a heavily wooded area, but most of the trees down in this little crater have red leaves with some purple and white blossoms here and there compared to the strictly green trees that dot the areas surrounding this place. There are also several oak hearts wandering around this area that have red leaves on them, matching the red trees they are living around, which can be directly compared to the oak hearts with green leaves that are up on the hill right next to it. And I think this area is just super cool. There's nothing super important going on here except for a one-off event, as well as a point of interest people need for map completion. It's just a very nice area that exists here in the middle of Queensdale. I love the look of the trees here, and I think they are beautiful. And I think the special oak hearts here just make this place extra special. Queensdale is a pretty great map, and this place has always been memorable for me. In the number 6 spot is the Ancestor Tree. This is a great tree that you can find in the Jahai Bluffs. It is a giant tree with its own point of interest in the ruined procession that is surrounded by one of Krakatooric's Mist's timey-wimey spacey wacy brand bubbles of magical chaos that causes the Ancestor Tree to go through temporal shifts, where basically the area surrounding the tree changes every 10 minutes into 3 different phases. The first phase is one where there are Jinn vessels you have to search to free the Jinn. The second phase is one where there's a lot of brand energy that is building up in the area and you have to take care of. And the third one is where there are just a bunch of fanged abogas wandering around with no events going on. The tree itself is super cool, but it is incredibly important in the lore of the Guild Wars universe, where the tree itself is incredibly important to the various different tribes of Elonian centaurs that used to exist around this region of the world, where there used to be several ancestor trees that existed in these lands that allowed the centaurs to have a spiritual connection with the lands and their ancestors, allowing centaurs to pass their knowledge from one generation to the next. But with all the events that have happened in this part of the world, and with all the Elonian centaurs now being extinct, this tree is the last of its kind to exist, no longer home to centaurs, but still being an incredible location to visit. And the number 5 spot are the trees found throughout the Timberline Falls. This is kind of just a generic answer as I'm talking about all of the trees here, but they're just so cool. Timberline Falls is one of my favorite zones visually in the entire game, where the trees play an important part in the visuals of the map. They can be found everywhere, along the river, next to the waterfalls, up in the mountains, in this Jotun camp, just everywhere. As long as you are outside of a cave, you can probably see a tree from anywhere you are standing. You have some basic green trees in the greener regions of the map, you got snow-capped trees in the snowy regions of the map, you have some bigger ones and smaller ones, some are more bare, these two are dying. It's pretty basic, but I just love these trees in Timberline Falls, and when I think of trees in Guild Wars 2, my mind always goes to them. I think it just shows how important trees really are for making Tyria a really cool place. Imagine Timberline Falls without any of the trees, it would be very desolate and be much worse of a map. And the number 4 spot is another generic answer, and it is the trees in the Bitterfrost frontier, specifically the trees in the Griffin Old Growth. This is a really cool part of the world that I have loved ever since the Bitterfrost frontier has released. It is a very densely wooded area that has massive trees all throughout, with some smaller trees dotted throughout alongside some other fun trees like this one that has fallen over and now acts as a bridge over this mostly frozen river. The big trees have giant mushrooms growing off of them, with some that you can climb up onto. There are some hidden chests located around here you can find, and there are just a bunch of cool touches to this entire area. Ever since the map originally released, I have dreamed about having this small region of the world be turned into an entire map. I just love how these big trees are and how wooded this area is. I would love an entire map like this, either snowy or green, that just has massive trees everywhere. Maybe even have a forest that is more dense than this, with some cool huts and outposts and caves and other structures and areas spread throughout, with lots of cool secrets you can find. This location in Bitterfrost Frontier has just always sparked my imagination with what a future map can be, and that, combined with how cool this area is, just puts it high up on my list. In the number 3 spot is the final generic answer on this list, and it is the Drizzlewood coast trees. The vibes going on here are basically the same as I talked about in a previous video, where the southern reaches of Drizzlewood Coast is one of the few times in the Guild Wars universe where we can go to the region of the world known as the Woodland Cascades, where the forest in the northwestern corner of the Bitterfrost Frontier are the very fringe ends of the Woodland Cascades as it transitions into the Shiver Peaks, just like the northern reaches of Drizzlewood Coast. But I just love all of the trees around Drizzlewood Coast. This is pretty much what I was talking about wanting with a map when I first saw the forest in Bitterfrost Frontier, but I just want more. I really hope we get a map deeper in the Woodland Cascades one day. But when it comes to the Drizzlewood Coast, this entire forest is beautiful. I especially love the start of the map with the mountains forming fingers over the starting region, with this giant broken tree that serves as the entrance between the start of the map and the rest of the map heading north. But as you wander around this place, the trees are just so cool. There are so many of them, and many reach high into the sky, and I just love walking around this area and feeling like I am in a cool forest. And the number 2 spot is the Solitaire Island Tree. This is a relatively small tree located in the village of Astoria, which is the starting town for Sylvari players. This is a point of interest just east of the Astoria waypoint that most Sylvari players or anyone who has done world completion should recognize. It is a tree coming up in 2 spirals around each other that has some fruit hanging from the center of it. There are some bugs flying around it, the ground around it is carefully taken care of. There's a fun Sylvari bridge that you can walk over to get to this place. You can see the shadows of some birds flying nearby, and there are 2 Sylvari hanging out here. By talking to the Sylvari, you can learn that this tree is the Wardenlight Tree, which grows materials that the Wardens use to create weapons and armor, which allows them to defend the grove and the areas around here more effectively, where this tree serves as a symbol of the Wardens and is pretty important for that organization. As a Sylvari player, this tree is just super important and nostalgic for me. It is one of the first things you see in the game, and it stands out from everything around it. There are also a couple of events related to termites that you can participate in to help protect this tree. And now for the number 1 spot, for my favorite tree in all of Guild Wars 2, and this is probably pretty obvious if you have watched this video thus far and also know who I am as a person, because my favorite tree is the Peo tree. This is a massive tree that is located in the center of the grove that is incredibly important for the Sylvari and for the story of Guild Wars 2. Before we get into the technical stuff, let's just talk about how it looks, because it is gorgeous. It is a massive tree located on the Tarnished coast that has very deep roots and comes up to gorgeous, massive pink blossoms. It looks out over the grove, and it's one of the most prominent landmarks on the Tarnished coast. Where I have explained this several times in different videos on my channel, but the crash course is that this tree was planted and cultivated by a human Shining Blade agent known as Ronin, as well as a centaur known as Ventari, where, long story short, the tree grew and eventually blossomed a race of sentient plant-like creatures known as Sylvari, which we can now play as. Where when we eventually learn that the Pale Tree is a blighting tree, which is basically just a minion factory for the Elder Dragon Mordramoth, and we can find several of these trees around the Heart of Thorns expansion, where the Pale Tree is a blighting tree that was purified and became benevolent. And I could talk about cool pieces of lore and the specifics of why I love the Pale Tree for hours, but in short, I just love it. It's a piece of Guild Wars 2 that I have just fallen in love with, and is one of my favorite parts of the entire game. I love the Sylvari race as a whole, and the entire culture surrounding them. I love calling the Grove my home, and I just find this place incredibly important, and compared to every other tree in all Guild Wars 2, the Pale Tree is just my favorite. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. This was a pretty fun video to make because I love trees, I love Guild Wars 2, and I love talking about both. This was definitely a hard list to make because there are just so many different options to choose from, so I have a long list of honorable mentions down below. If you are interested, feel free to check out my video about the best bridges in all of Guild Wars 2, or my video about the best rivers in all of Guild Wars 2. I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Have a good one, everyone.